Welcome also to political journalist Theo Usherwood. Good morning to you once again.
Very good morning to you.
Been a packed show so far.
Yes,
I haven't had enough chat time with you. Do you want to get your reaction, Theo, to the subject we were just talking about with Rupert Lowe from Reform UK? We had a very short time with him, unfortunately, about the Channel migrant figures. I mean, it is stunning. 1,424 Channel migrants that we know about, the ones who were intercepted and brought to shore, arrived on Saturday and Sunday in the UK. It brings to a total of over 25,000 those who have arrived this year. 11,478 have arrived since the Prime Minister has been in the job. I mean, these figures are astonishing. That smash and the gangs thing going really well.
And it's looking like we're going to, of course, surpass last year's total of 29,000. And the point that Robert Jenrick, who, of course, was an immigration minister, worked in the Home Office, bidding to become the next Conservative leader, has made that he was told, when he was working in the Home Office, that he was warned that some of these individuals who are crossing the Channel could be potential terrorists. Which
is really weird, because when I've talked about things like this, everyone just shouts racist at me, because everyone knows they are all these people. They're astrophysicists, they're engineers, and they're doctors, these young men coming across.
This came from the advice that he received from officials when he was working
as a
Home Office Minister. And you cannot lie about your record it's very difficult, impossible to lie, I would have thought, about your record in government when you're working in a particular department, because you're going to get called out on it. If you'd lied about it, he's going to get called out very shortly.
Absolutely.
If not already.
And again,
so you have to take his word on that.
We'd like to have known this a bit sooner. I mean, this is a genuine, serious concern. Again, with spate of terror attacks we have seen across the whole of Europe, indeed, in recent years. Let's go back to what's going on at Labour Party conference. This big speech from Rachel Reeves in an hour. Again, usual rules. Lots of broadcasters will take it live because I like you too much. I'm not taking it live. I'm sorry. These things are...
You didn't feel like it,
I just no, seriously, I don't think we should encourage them. I don't think we should encourage them by paying attention.
That was 40-minute speech.
Yeah, I'm just... hello. I just can't do it. But, I mean, the thing is, I'm just probably going to try and ignore it, although I'll probably joke about, I paid for this suit myself. You know, and she's been asked about this in all the media interviews she's done this morning, Rachel Reeves. But I just don't think it's going to fly at a time when people are really tightening their belts, really worried about this. The pain, we're told, from the Prime Minister and the Chancellor is going to be in the budget on October the 30th, with times so hard, people, people going, right, the weather's getting rotten, we're going to have to start putting the heating on. We're worried about doing that. We're still trying to pay off last year's heating bill. All the things that I think this laughing off of paid for my own suit today thing, don't think it's going to fly. I don't think the whole, but we obeyed the rules, we stuck to all the rules, the Keir Starmer legalese defence, that is just not washing with the general public, and you can see that in the polls.
Yes, and it's not okay when you set out a strategy, a political strategy, and we've seen it before, where you say, OK, we're going to hammer the Tories for the way they are behaving. You have to write, OK, that's a pro, you put that in the pro, we can win some votes on this. In the con column, you have to be able to put in, actually, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. That's what you have to do if you're going to adopt that strategy.
Every government says this, they're going to do that, and then they never seem to live up to it. I'm thinking back to basics with John Major at this point.
But Boris Johnson, we knew all of his faults, all of his foibles before the 2019 general election. We knew about everything pretty much. But the public accepted it because there wasn't any hypocrisy, and he went and won an 80-seat majority.
He did get away with a lot, didn't he, for that?
But he never claimed to be something that he wasn't. When he told people to stay at home, you couldn't hug your granny, you couldn't put your kids in school, and then we had dancing on the photocopier, that's when he got into trouble. And it's that hypocrisy that gets politicians into trouble every time.
One rule for you, one rule for us. And that's the thing. This idea, again, we get offered these freebies. Yes, we understand. If I was offered free tickets to Taylor Swift, I would have taken them. If I were offered, free tickets to football, I would take them. Here's the thing, though, is that most people don't get those offers. It doesn't happen in their lives. And as we know, in the world of business now, there's actually been a massive clampdown on that sort of hospitality in terms of how it could be perceived to influence. But when it's in government, the key thing is, why are people offering you this? Why is someone offering to buy your clothes? What are they getting in return? Why is someone saying... I mean, we're told, like Lord Wahid Ali, the Labour donuts at the centre of all this, who is at party conference, that, he was quite happy to offer Angela Rayner, then, deputy leader of the Labour Party, before she became deputy PM, a stay in his apartment, his fantastic penthouse apartment with amazing views across Manhattan. Well, if they're big mates, then that's fine. But at the end of the day, he seems to be mates with everybody, doesn't he?
What Rupert Lowe didn't say, and what he could well have said, what he could have said about his time in the city, is the reason these institutions have had a clampdown is because they want their employees to make their best decision for their bank or their financial institution or legal firm, not for somebody who's got them in their pocket. And that's the important thing here. And the same applies to government. We need Angela Rayner or Rachel Reeves or Keir Starmer to make the best decisions for this country, to get this country back on its feet, not for whoever's pocket they currently reside in.
I have said for a very long time, I want big money out of our politics altogether. It seems to me to be reasonable. And you know, it doesn't matter if it's 17 grand here or 12 grand here or 2 grand for things. I want money out of politics because it is so utterly corrosive to our political life. And that will involve, I'm afraid, a lot of the time, that the taxpayer's going to have to pick up the tab, more of this what's called short money. I think it's a small price to pay.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's extraordinary that Keir Starmer, for instance, if you're a police officer, you can't be taking freebies from anyone. When he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he wasn't allowed to take a freebie from anyone, and there was no declaring I obeyed the rules. He wasn't allowed to take freebies from anyone. Why is the person who is enacting the law, effectively, enforcing the law as Director of Public Prosecutions, not allowed to take them, but the person who's making the law is allowed to take them? It doesn't add up. I
found myself on crime scenes when I was a cub reporter out in Nottingham.
I'm glad you added the as a cub reporter. We were all getting a bit worried then.
No, not at the... Not having committed the crime.
You seem like a nice lad.
But you'd have police officers at the cordon protecting the crime scene. And I remember police officers would give me a £5, and they'd been there for hours, and they'd be in their boots standing there making sure. They'd give me a £5 and they said, "Could you go and buy me a chocolate bar?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll go buy you a chocolate bar."
How much the chocolate bar?
But they wouldn't let me give them the change, because they wouldn't want anybody to be seen to give them money. So they had to pay.
You couldn't say, "Let me buy you a coffee, mate."
No, they couldn't. I wasn't even allowed to.
Because they have to be so
because
careful.
They have to be above. They have to be absolutely beyond reproach.
Again, and this is the thing, and everyone it just doesn't feel right. And again, it's the hypocrisy. It's the H word every time. And what's what we're asking you about today, because about the freebies, we've asked you a lot about those Labour freebies. It's still dominating the news. It's just one after the other after the other. But now the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has billed the taxpayer £68,000 a year for a vanity photographer for her department. Yes, it's the civil servants who've done this. It's her department in housing and that has got this. But it's 68 grand a year at a time where the government hasn't got money for a lot of other things. I want to know what your reaction is. It's simple as that, because given that she did only a few years ago openly criticise in a tweet, there's always a tweet, folks, there's always a tweet, Boris Johnson over his taxpayer fund of photographers in Number 10. This was at a time, she said, when the government is refusing to extend free school meals, this is in 2021, during half-term week, pushing ahead with plans to cut £1,000 from universal credit, the public will be rightly questioning why there is apparently no limit on the money that can be found to pay for a coterie of vanity photographers for the Prime Minister. Instead of spending more taxpayers' money on photographers, the Prime Minister should prioritise supporting hard-pressed families and the children who are going hungry during this crisis. Well, you could just take out the word Boris Johnson, take out the words about the children and put in pensioners and their winter fuel payments. I mean, there we are. There's no difference.
You just go back to the point. Do the job, and the public are going to thank you for it. Do you need to have a photographer to prove that you've actually built houses?
I think the British public will forgive an awful lot as long as they think people are doing the job properly. But I don't know the last time we had a government doing the job properly.
But
answers on a postcard. When was the last time we had a government doing the job properly? But I want you to get in touch. What is your reaction to this vanity photographer story, to all the freebie stories, the hypocrisy? I just want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Look, let's also talk about something completely different. Let's talk about Hezbollah and Israel. We've seen some, extraordinarily audacious attacks on Hezbollah militants. Militants in a terrorist organisation, just a reminder there, by, we believe, Mossad, the Israeli secret services, last week, followed by a lot of, tit-for-tat bombing and rockets. IDF has basically warned people in southern Lebanon, we are going to be taking out militants in the area. You're going to have to leave your buildings. Look, that's exactly what's happened in northern Israel. Some 60,000 people removed from their homes. A lot of fears that this is all ramping up to be something much more scary, especially given that Hezbollah is a much, much bigger and much more well-equipped and indeed well-trained. They fought in Syria for Assad. That's how lovely they are, fighting force than Hamas.
Yes, I think it's concerning because given what Israel did with that, audacious attack, and it was a targeted attack against Hezbollah commanders and Hezbollah fighters with the walkie-talkies and with the pagers. Yeah. This is an organisation that has been humiliated. Psychologically, it is on its knees, and that makes it dangerous, because are we now going to see they have to come out fighting, they have to come out with further rocket attacks against Israel? And I think there's a danger that the whole thing explodes in the Middle East. And of course, Hezbollah is backed by Iran, and then we see a regional war which could have huge impact here.
The only thing is, anyone who goes to war with Israel always loses.
Well, Israel is
an existential battle for Israel. They have no choice.
Yes.
So, you know...
And it's a nuclear power.
They have
Iran
to win.
Yes, and it's a nuclear power.
The only reason Iran isn't a nuclear power is because Israel has made darn sure Iran's not a nuclear power.
And therefore, you know, if we get to that point, and heaven forbid we never do get to that point, and nobody would ever want us to get to that point, but Israel is going to continue to exist. And it's about time the Iranians, Hezbollah and Hamas just get with the programme.
Yeah, well, again, that's what's interesting, is how many of the Arab leaders were, you know, we know the Gaza attack was basically at the point when it looked like Saudi Arabia was going to be signing an accord with Israel. You know, Israel has gone out of its way to try and, you know, make peace with these other countries, and basically most of the other Arab leaders are just like, for the love of God, can we just get on with coexistence? It's in everyone's interest. Look, we'll talk about that so many different times, so many more times over the coming months, I'm sure. Just one final story I want to get to before we go take a break. Extraordinary situation we've seen with, and we're going to talk to Bernie Spothoff very soon, the businesswoman who has faced charges, thankfully now dropped, for a tweet which was accused of sparking the post-Southport riots. But we've seen a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old going to court, other children, a huge percentage of those caught up in the Southport riots, well, in many different parts of the country, were actually teenagers. But we had a 12-year-old boy who, you know, has got a court order against a criminal record. His mum also got fined £1,200 because she decided to sod off on a 5-day holiday to Ibiza instead of go to court for his sentencing after he pleaded guilty to his charges. She was fined by the magistrate, I think quite rightly. But this is a really interesting case. A boy of 14, who can't be identified, obviously, because of his age, he was so sternly told off by his parents that both police and prosecutors decided to take no further action. It was the mum and dad. They took their son to the police station after learning of his role in the disorder on social media. They were so angry with him and were punishing him that they decided that actually there was no need to criminalise the child because he'd already been punished enough. Now, here's my thing. I don't want a load of 14-year-olds who do something stupid in the heat of the moment to have criminal records. Here's the thing, though. I don't understand why a 12-year-old lad, who obviously was involved in riots and was prosecuted, but who's clean, dad nowhere to be seen, mum off on a holiday in Ibiza. It tells you the parenting that this kid has had, the absolute failure, abject failure of parenting this child has had. Clearly not been shown right and wrong, because how could you have been if that is what reaction of your parents to you being sentenced in court for a serious crime? But this 14-year-old boy, by definition, we now know he had good parenting. His parents were horrified. He'd been shown right and wrong. Why is it that he doesn't get prosecuted when he did know right from wrong and had been given a good example, but the lad who quite clearly had been failed by his parents does get prosecuted? It seems to me this is yet more two-tier justice. It
doesn't seem fair on the two children in question. So one child who has the strict upbringing,
normal, basically adequate parenting.
Basically adequate parenting, that your child comes home and says they've been in a riot and you go, right, we're off down to the police station and you're going to take responsibility for it. That's a good way
That's the sort of thing my parents would have done, to be fair.
Yeah, my mum would have done the same, yeah. Yeah. And you take the punishment and you face up to it. And he's not going to have a criminal record. The 12-year-old, on the other hand, whose mum is in Ibiza and actually needs some support and needs some parenting, suddenly finds himself now with a criminal record. That doesn't seem fair, because that's going to affect their life chances.
Yeah, I can't decide whether they should both have criminal records or both not have criminal records. I would like the mum of the 12-year-old to be prosecuted, not just face a fine.
She's gone on a parenting course as well.
Well done. I mean, I really think we should start holding parents to account. I'm definitely responsible for stuff that my kid did when she was 12. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just find it extraordinary. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I just think it's wrong that, you know, I'm not saying you make excuses for a kid who's, because you had rotten parents or your dad wasn't at home, you could just commit any crime. No, absolutely not. But I just think it's a bit weird that a kid who's clearly did know right from wrong, Tell me a 12-year-old or 14-year-old who doesn't know it's wrong to riot. I mean, come on, give me a break. I just love to hear your thoughts on this.